Afternoon. I'm really happy to be here. I actually grew up in this area, so my parents don't live too far away from the school, so it's like kind of coming back home. But I get to come here and do a training after school, so that's fun. So I'm really excited to be working with you this afternoon. And our topic today, like Donna mentioned, is the balanced literacy and the gradual release of instruction. And we are really going to be just discussing the foundation before we really get into guided reading, because that's the goal. And it does sound like some of your buildings are at different phases of guided reading. Maybe you have done some benchmarking, maybe you're leveling your students, which is fabulous. We're going to kind of go back to the basics, so we're establishing some consistency before we really get into the nitty-gritty of management of your classroom, guided reading, writing breakfast, and so forth. So our objectives for the next hour or so, we're going to really go back and define what is balanced literacy, what are the essential components of balanced literacy, what is the gradual release of instruction, and you do not have the PowerPoint, so I'm just going to tell you that now. You'll have a note-taking guide and some of the important components of the PowerPoint. And how do we teach balanced literacy? Through the gradual release. On the last page of the packet that looks like this, there is a note-taking guide, and I ask that you just rip that off. So just rip the note-taking guide off so you have it in front of you. On the note-taking guide, up in the corner, you'll see a little bubble that says Quick Write. And there are two questions, and I would like you to take just 2 minutes to think about what do you know at this point in time about the gradual release of instruction, and what do you know about balanced literacy. So right now, I'm just going to have you do a quick write. What do you know? Have you heard these terms before? What do you think of when you think of gradual release and balanced literacy? Go ahead and have you stop. Also, the signal that I like to give during training is the Give Me 5 signal. And so if we're having a discussion or I'm having you write something down when we're about ready to complete that activity, I'll just say, Give Me 5. And if you see me do that, go ahead and put your hands up, and then we'll be ready to move on. I'd like you to go and turn and talk to the person sitting next to you about what you have down on your notes. What do you know? So go ahead and turn and talk. Like there's some backgrounds here. These topics are fabulous. So please share, or if you have something you'd like to add through these slides, please don't hesitate to share your ideas. So I'm going to go back to the basics before balanced literacy really came about. So it's really called the Great Debate. And it was all about the influences of skill-based teaching and meaning-based teaching. Skill-based teaching was influenced by Jean Chall and Marilyn Adams. This was all about intensive phonics instruction that is highly sequential. It's all about learning letter-sound relationships, sounding out words. Stories include very controlled vocabulary. It's all about using just phonetic readers, a little more skill and drill. Then on the other side, we have meaning-based teaching. And this was influenced by Kenneth Goodman. Thumb up if you have heard of Kenneth Goodman. This emphasizes the structure and meaning of language, not the graphic information, focusing on reading comprehension and the meaning of text, stimulating reading and writing experiences, and students are still learning to decode, but it's all contextual. How do we figure out words through context? And so that term balanced literacy originated in California in the 90s. So not too far back. Well, it feels like it's not too far back, but that is kind of far back, isn't it? Late 90s, 1996. In response to low reading scores on national tests, a new curriculum called Balanced Literacy was implemented. Its original form, Balanced Literacy, focused on presenting both skills-based and meaning-based during separate literacy blocks. So we're looking at both of those ways of teaching, but they were taught separately. The focus of a new curriculum was the systematic and explicit teaching of phonics as a foundation to comprehension, as well as providing literature-based experiences for students. So the research shown in the late 90s supports the idea that successful teaching requires skill instruction, including phonics and phonemic awareness. That's important. You need to be teaching our kids phonics. Therefore, balanced reading instruction in the classroom should combine phonics with a whole language approach to teach both skills and meaning and to meet the reading needs of individual children. On your note-taking guide, you have this little paragraph, and it's on the other side, so if you turn your note-taking guide over. And this is a little closed note. You can fill in the blanks as I read you the little paragraph about balanced for teaching children in the student opportunities for and writing experiences. Kindergarten is model for literacy and the research of Murray Clay, Irene Faunus, and Jesus Snell. Children read and write each day independently and in group settings. Differentiating and how can we best meet our students' needs through a differentiated classroom. Balanced literacy classrooms focus on the gradual release of responsibility. Can you back there? You also have an article. If you can get the article, it's Every Child, Every Day, that you should have picked up when you came in. What I'm going to ask you to do is take the next 4 or 5 minutes to skim and scan through this article. Richard Allington is one of the researchers behind this article, and he has a lot of research out there that really supports means of getting kids. I'm going to have you take a little bit of time to read through the article. It's easy reading. Skim and scan, take some notes. As you read, if you can, on your note-taking guide, go ahead and jot down just some important points that come out at you as you read. So maybe 2 or 3 important points about his research through this article, Every Child, Every Day. All right, so you can go ahead and start. Just go ahead and finish up the part you're on, and if you could jot down a couple ideas or takeaways from the article on your note-taking guide. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and have you stop where you're at. You kind of look at the article, but hopefully you got through most of the article, most of the news that's there. So at your table now, you're kind of going to split in half a little bit. So get in a group of 3 or 4, and if you only have 5, the group of 5 can work together. So just kind of split in half. And then whoever has the shortest hair in your little group, you're going to be number 1. So whatever they said. And number 4, you're going to be the kudos for great job. If your first time, that can be the, and then
I was doing something all day.
No, yeah,
There is a signature table that you would like to share out, something that someone at your table said that was just riveting that you'd like to share.
We talked a lot about how, like at our middle school, we're making sure that this is applied in every content area and not just in reading. With that idea of it shouldn't be a short answer question or fill in the blank social studies or science.
That's why I love, if we have middle school folks here, that's great, because you can tell us all elementary folks what the expectation is, because even in kindergarten, content, doing this type of thing in content area and with expository text is really vital, because that is the foundation of our students' future. It is all content area learning when we get into middle and high school. Even if, you know, it's all important. So even looking at cross-curricular, how vital it is to be doing some of these things. Thank you for bringing that up. Anything else? We'll keep going. So we're going to talk about the gradual release and also teaching balanced literacy through the gradual release of instruction. Graves and Fitzgerald in 2003 note that effective instruction often follows a progression in which teachers gradually do less of the work and students should gradually assume increased responsibility for their learning. Progress of gradually assuming more and more responsibility for their learning, that students become competent, independent learners. So really the goal is to take students through that gradual release for kids to do it on their own. And so we'll be talking about the gradual release of instruction. Book, and we'll talk a little bit about this little book later, but on the very back side, this is the book, it says Academic Action Plan. On the very back side, you just turn it over, you will see the components of the gradual release of instruction, and we're going to go through each of these components in great detail. So we start with the modeled, where the teacher is doing all of the work. Modeled instruction, it's kind of like a teacher demonstration. It's where I'm doing all the talking and the demonstration of the concept. It's just the teacher thinking aloud and demonstrating the learning that is at hand for the lesson. Then we move into shared, and shared, I like to call it holding their hands, where we're doing it together. I've demonstrated, and now we're going to work through it together. We're going to learn the concept where the students are going to take a part of it along with myself as the teacher. I release the responsibility to my students. So I've taught it, I've demoed, I've done it together with my kids, and then they're doing it on their own or in small groups with heavy support. So the teacher is still there monitoring and supporting the students. Concept, the ultimate goal, of course, is to get students to be independent learners. Really, we want to refrain from going from modeled to independent. Tell students what the learning is and show them, oh, they're going to do it on their own, because that's where some of our kids have challenges, right? Some of our kids can handle that. Some of our kids can, you know your students right now in your classroom, where you show them what to do, and they have the direction, they can do it on their own with high proficiency. But then you know your students that are going to need different levels of the gradual release. So it's all about how we move through that gradual release of responsibility through the content that we're teaching to our students. So let's look at these pictures. We compare this to the writing advice scenario here. So let's look at the 4 pictures on your note-taking guide. We're kind of going all over on the note-taking guide, but it's in the bottom little square. You'll see gradual release, writing advice. Think about those 4 components: modeled, shared, guided, independent. And which one of these pictures mostly shows independent? Which one shows modeled, shared, and guided? And go ahead and write those next to the letter. So, which one of the 4 does the picture in A show, the little guy on the right? Which one? B, C, and D. So you're choosing modeled, shared, guided, or independent. Which term are you going to write next to A? Which will you write next to B? So let's see if you can figure that one out. So, okay, so look at this. A, what do you say? Independent, he's riding his bike. Some of these could look a little different, I agree. B, what would you say? Shared, because it is heavier support. C, guided. And D, and I just don't think he could get on the bike and show him that he's talking about it and showing him the bike. So I want you to take a moment and think about something you have recently learned how to do. It can be in your home life, something that you learned how to do. Just think about that. Now I want you to think about what was the process that you went through to learn how to do that task. At your table, whoever's birthday is closest to today, I would like you to share with your table, if you're comfortable doing so, that task and how you learned how to do it. Find out whose birthday is Did anyone have something fun they shared at their table that they'd like to share with their group? You guys want to share?
No, I hadn't put my hand down yet.
You're just giving me 5.
Yeah.
Great. Nobody wants to share? Okay, share. It's got to be time to talk loud.
My daughter showed me how to do Shutterfly. I wanted to make Christmas cards. And so first I called her and I was like, well, how do I get my picture there? And she tried to tell me, and then we FaceTime. I sent her the picture. She did it and showed me through the computer. And then I decided we needed another picture, and I was able to do the rest by myself then. But she demonstrated or modeled it. And
So you're
guided me.
learning with through the gradual release to some degree. Do you feel like most of those that you recently learned how to do, you didn't have to go through some of those phases of the gradual release? Did you say that happened? That's kind of a natural way of how we learn. Our students. On your note-taking guide, you also have a square that says modeled, shared, independent, and guided. So as I go through each component, you're welcome to take little notes in those boxes if you'd like. So let's look at modeled instruction. So modeled instruction, it really should be brief. It's about the demonstration, like I was just discussing. It's a new learning, and it's just the teacher showing how to do it. It's not telling them, okay, we're going to do math book page 2 through 5, and you're going to subtract 2-digit numbers. Demonstration, that's telling them what they're doing. The demonstration is about writing it on a chart, talking it through. So my students hear my thinking and understand the process that I'm. And as I'm learning, I want them to be thinking about that as well. Students are not involved in models. Students are really hands-on. We're not even really questioning students yet. Demonstrating. What it is not, it shouldn't be 20 minutes of showing. If I stood here and talked to you, although we are sitting for quite a while, I like to get up a lot, but we're sitting for a while. But if you just sit and watch me for the entire hour and a half, that's going to be a long time, and it's the end of the day. So think about your students. If they're not involved in models, it's really important that you chunk it, that you're demonstrating, and then you move on to shared. Where are the kindergarten people in here and first grade? You're very special. I love kindergarten, first grade. You're doing this all day long. I will say in kindergarten and first grade rooms, this comes very natural to you as teachers because you're chunking the information all day. You're going back and you're demonstrating, and then now you try, and then we demonstrate, and we go back and forth. So I'm going to show you just the opening of a lesson. And a teacher is going to be, she's teaching a social studies lesson, and I want you to watch what she's doing through the modeling. And as you watch, I want you to think about how the teacher models the objective through the use of her Think Aloud. You do have a video guide. Take notes on the model. It's on the bottom section on the other side of your note-taking form. Click on it. I'm just gonna, I don't know where you. Hi, my name is Megan Montgomery, and I'm a. No, it's embedded. It's embedded. I haven't been following. No, that's not the same thing. Oh, it's not. What's going on here? I didn't know this is. I haven't been following the whole time. Oh my gosh. Keep trying. It's still there. We're waiting patiently. We love technology. Model instruction. See, it's not clicking. Put it on full screen. Okay. Yeah, there you go. Hi, my name is Megan Montgomery, and I'm a social studies teacher at San Francisco Bay Academy, and I teach the 5th and 6th graders. So I know this is a book that tells facts. Yeah. And I know that there are 2 main parts that I want to look at today and study today. And the first one is called a family farmstead. And when I look at the pictures here, I can see animals, goat land. When I'm teaching strategy, I'm modeling as a reader in my head because I want the students to know what a good reader would be thinking about while they were trying to access a particular text. Your page with me. One time through, and I'm going to go back. Your father's brothers lived with you too. So this book is pretending that I'm an ancient Sumerian and it's explaining my life story. At this living quarters. So today, when I was doing the Think Aloud strategy of the folk diagram, I was thinking about how the text that I had chosen fits into the diagram and exactly what I want the students to be thinking about during the time that they are reading and they're applying this strategy. I asked the students to practice the strategy that I've taught for the day, and really I try to tackle it very much. So I start with the Think Aloud, and then we move on to a you with a partner, and they.
Okay, so turn and talk about what did she do for her Think Aloud during the modeled instruction.
I'm not gonna worry about it. There's only 6 people watching.
Okay, 5. Is involved in the conversation. She just modeled, and was she just standing and talking? Do to help the students understand. Organizer. She wrote on the graphical order of thinking. And how long did it take? It wasn't that long, was it? It was pretty short. So now we move to balanced literacy, model reading and model writing. Reading is really about the reading aloud. Highlight primary teachers. We do this a lot, especially to use a comprehension strategy. Further down the road, the goal to dig deeper into guided reading. In getting to guided reading, before the students are practicing with the leveled reader, the strategies have comprehension and their attitudes about reading. Now, when we look at balanced literacy, we also look at the writing side. So we're looking at all of this for reading and writing. So when we look at model, it's you modeling the writing for the student. So for emergent writers, it might be very person doing? It's very basic. Maybe it's writing about our experiences when we're not a primary student. When you get up into the intermediate and learning a narrative text or persuasive writing, it's you do your own. Yes, you might know. Okay. All right. Now, okay. So when you look at modeled writing, it's all about you showing them. So showing them your writing, showing them how you're going to persuade. And it's not more than someone can see the process, and you're thinking as you write. So in that package where we ripped off the note-taking guide, there in the second page, there's a front and back strategy card, and this one is on summarizing. So the front of that card explains what sum is and how teachers can make an anchor chart to teach summarizing, and how do I summarize. But then when you look on the back side of that, you can move to the gradual release to teach the concept of summarizing. Strategy cards for, I think, 8 different strategies. So if this is something you're interested in, I can send it to you electronically. This might be something you want to use in your classrooms or in your building. And so is everyone there? So let's look at the modeled instruction for summarizing. So once again, before I work on summarizing in a guided reading group, I need to make sure that I've been talking about summarizing in my models and my shared lessons. So when I'm modeling summarizing, the teacher has the text, and I'm kind of talking through what's on your sheet here. Teacher lingo. Let me show you how I summarize. Listen to the section of the text. The author told me. Details are very important because my summary is. So that could be a possible way that I talk through the summary with my students. By myself, modeling, not with my students yet, by myself. So elements are modeling the thinking and explaining how to use that strategy. Doing it. I saw in some of your note-taking guides when we did the quick write in the beginning, a lot of you had I do, we do. So there's a lot of background here in gradual release. So it was fun to see that, because knowing that modeling, it is just you doing the work. And that's hard sometimes because your kids want to be involved all the time. You have some kids that always want to ask questions and always want to be involved, but if you're not modeling. To shared instruction, what it is, this can be whole group, it can be small group, or it can even be in pairs. Shared instruction doesn't always have to be an entire whole group lesson. Checking for understanding through prompting and questioning. All of the students in the group should be participating to some degree. If you're just question, answer, not all of the students are involved. So you want to be thinking about how can I get all of my students engaged in the shared instruction part of the lesson. The cognitive load begins to shift with teacher and student interaction. So this is where I can be questioning students. This is where I could be sharing the pen in a shared writing activity. So it's doing it together. So we want to try to refrain from just modeling and demo to just moving into guided and independent. It's important that we're practicing together. And depending on what it is you're teaching, depends on the level of shared support that you need to provide. Maybe this isn't the first time you've taught summarizing. Maybe we've been doing it a while, but we're just doing it in a different way. So my level of support might not have to be great. A little shared activity that we do, and then we move into working on it on our own. So shared is not kids working independently by themselves. It's not giving a quiz or a test, or initiating question, individual response that I was just referring to. It's not just the teacher in control of the room from only a handful of students. think about in your class right now, you have those students that always raise their hand or always participate, right? You all think of those little guys, those little girls. We love them so much, but they always want to talk and share, and that's great. But we want to give everybody a chance to share. I do work closely with English as a second language students and teachers, and this is really big with the ESL students because they aren't as motivated or they're not participating as much because of the language proficiency that they're at. So we need to think about how we can get all of our students to participate. I have to always bring the side note of ESL because that's kind of one of my passions. So doing it together. So now when we look at balanced literacy, shared reading is when we participate with the teacher in the literacy strategy. So this might just be simply making an anchor chart. So developing an anchor chart on how to summarize, which you'll see that in the shared part of the example here on your strategy card. Engaging opportunities. Maybe we're reading a text together and locating details or important points. For shared writing, it's when I'm sharing the pen, we're writing together. For a first grade or second grade classroom, maybe I'm doing it on a chart. Together, we're putting our words together and the kids are helping me to write it. Maybe I'm modeling something, but then the kids are also writing at their desk on a whiteboard. And so we're talking it through together, I'm showing it up above, the kids are writing as well. The focus is on the content of the message, which can be the daily message, a response to literature, and so forth. So that's how it really looks in balanced literacy. I'm going to show just a little snippet of a shared reading, and this is a primary classroom.
Right, mommy, what? Good, and what sounds today? Very good. I am yellow. I am a banana. I am yellow. I am a banana. All right, and who can raise their hand and tell me what letter this is? What letter? I. And can you tell me why this I is capitalized? Nope. He said it. It's the beginning of the sentence, so it's always capitalized. There you go. I am an orange. I am an orange. I am orange. I am orange.
Thank you for watching this with us. To highlight everybody, so I love intermediate too. It's great that you're with us. But really, she's sharing it with the students. What could she have done to get all the kids involved in answering her questions? Talk to the person next to you. What's something she could have done instead of just question, calling on certain kids? Is there something she could have done to get them all more engaged? Turn and talk. Share with your partner. What does this letter sound like? Yes, perfect. Anything else? you have something?
Yeah, I can blow it into your hands, and I blow it into my hands, they release and they release.
Love that. Blow it into your hands, release. That's great. That's a great idea. Good. Okay, and so the summarizing example, back to the gradual release teaching summarizing. So I might say, remember summarizing is remembering the important information. Before we read the next portion of our text, let's work to create an anchor chart. Next section of text. So maybe I read a text with my students and we create a chart together. We're going to grab the anchor chart for determining importance. Use this chart to assist students. Details. Allow students time to formulate the summary based on the completed chart. You can share with a partner. So getting all students engaged, making that chart together with my students, using a passage, and we create the summary together. Cooperative learning, using frames, the use of sentence frames. We're really into this right now. My coworkers and I, we're trying to do this more with teachers, and we have a lot of trainings on the use of academic language and how to get kids using frames more in their talking. So during shared and guided, it's a great idea to have starters and using frames. Even for middle school kids, I had you use a frame to debrief the article. And it does feel kind of funny at first, but it does keep you attentive. It keeps you listening. Who at your table was the one that had to add on? Raise your hand if you had to add on to what someone said. Did you feel like you had to really pay attention and listen? So you had to add on. So those are the kind of things we want our students to do as well. So thinking about how you can incorporate the use of the academic language frames as well during shared and guided components of your lesson. Okay, so guided instruction. What is guided? It's providing small group instruction at the student's instructional level. The teacher reteaches individuals or small groups. This is a time where I'm providing good, specific, prompt, descriptive feedback. It's immediate and it is the key for increasing student achievement. Feedback is one of the top indicators. Research shows this, that it is the top indicators of student progress and student success in the classroom. Students and saying, that's great. It's really having that discussion with your students about what they're doing well and why they're doing well with what they're learning or what they need to work on, and giving them the feedback on how they can make it better. So think about your use of descriptive feedback with your students during the day. When are you doing it mostly during the day? And how is it affecting your students' progress? And perhaps that can be a goal if that's something maybe you feel like you're lacking a little bit, because it does take time. You have to take the time to move around to your students and provide the feedback during the guided instruction. The cognitive load has really shifted to the students with teacher support. It's all about you're doing it and I'm helping. I'm walking around, I'm coming down and listening to students read, or I'm watching what they're doing and I'm providing that feedback. All areas of instruction. We talked about the importance of content area. It's during my social studies lesson. It's during guided reading. It's during the writing part where the students are writing, but I need to be walking around or pulling a group over to really help them with that task. It's not a whole group lecture. It's not just the students working and I'm sitting behind my desk. Okay? It's about me getting up and roaming the room or sitting with my small group and giving them a high level of support. It's not waiting and providing the feedback tomorrow or in 2 days. That research talks about the importance of it being prompt right here and now. I have to provide that good descriptive feedback. So now my students know it's fresh and I can make the change right here and now as the student. So this is the part of the social studies lesson where she is having the students work and then she's providing some support. Nope.
Students to know what a good reader would be thinking about while they were trying to access a particular text. Read along on your page with me. One time through, and then I'm going to go back and think about what the facts are. Your farmstead's quite large because your father's brothers, their wives and children live with you too. So this book is pretending that I'm an ancient explaining my life to me. Each own living quarters. I was doing the Think Aloud strategy of the spoke diagram. I was thinking about how the text that I had chosen fits into that exactly what I want the students to be thinking about during the time that they are reading and they're applying this strategy. I ask the students to practice the strategy that I've taught for the day is really, I try to scaffold it very much. So I start with the things, then we move on to a we-do, which is where they sit with a partner and they might read. One way that they might read is popcorn style. Another way they might read is orally. They might read in their heads. They talk about the comprehension strategy and complete it together, being important for students to be verbal about what to bounce the ideas off of each other. What about the title? The title here. When we're right? Half the year, what? We know the other half of the year is what is there a big topic? Awesome. I was just talking with Sheila, right? She was able to look at, and then after the we do, then we'll come back together and share what they thought about so that I can identify conceptions that they have or the way that they are thinking so I can make sure that they're on the right track. Themselves on a level my goal was to teach the students for the first time how to use the spoke diagram as a way to help them organize the text in their head, get all of the info out of their textbook. This graphic organizer across a variety of texts, across a variety of disciplines, and really take ownership of that as a tool they have to help them become better readers and also better writers. When a student or a pair of students is having some kind of difficulty with the Think Aloud process, I really try to listen to them and to see what they're thinking. Because a lot of times, if I truly listen, I can understand where their thinking is breaking down. So I'm never standing still. I'm always going around trying to see what the students are doing, try to understand more of what they're thinking, what's working and what's not working. And then if I see there's something that's not working, a pair of students or even a bigger group there to intervene and make sure that I'm guiding thinking the way that I want them to be thinking. in today's text, there were a lot of facts about Sumerians that I wanted the students to understand. And when the students are reading a text that's so packed with facts, it can be difficult for them to determine what the main ideas are and versus what the details are, and to find out what are the most important things. So when I use the spoke diagram, it's a way for them to visually break down the text into the main points, the subpoints, and the details that are supporting that. And when they can see that all laid out in front of them, it helps them to say, okay, this is what the text is really about, and this is what I'm needing to know. I'm definitely seeing a lot of improvement in the way that our students are able to comprehend the materials that they're reading. I know that I'm seeing a lot of improvement because of the kinds of diagnostic tools and the assessments that I'm using, and I'm typically seeing between 2 and 3 years growth from our students in their ability to comprehend.
Turn and talk quickly. Moving from guided to independent, what types of holding is she providing her students during her lesson through that graduate level? So now, as I said before, really digging deeper into guided reading. So guided reading is really when the teacher works with a small group who are working at their instructional levels with similar needs. How many of you in your building have our benchmarking students and finding reading levels? Some of you? I want to be great, about half of you, but that's great. So that really has to come first before you start putting students into guided groups, because you group your students according to their instructional levels. And you need to benchmark them to really get a good feel of where they're reading. And we do that based on Fontes and Pinnell, the Fontes and Pinnell leveling system. So this is a place where students are practicing the reading, and the teacher is coaching, prompting, evaluating, and really providing that good descriptive feedback that we were just discussing. It's really about supporting and encouraging the development of strategies for independent reading. So when you look at guided writing, that's where the teacher works with the whole class or small groups of students who have similar needs. And the purpose is to provide focused writing instruction to the small group. So it's releasing that responsibility where the students are working and I'm monitoring. Just like in the video, she said there's rare times where she's sitting down, because there are going to be students that always need a certain level of support. And at work time, thinking about your kids, and all of your students handle that new concept at the independent level all the time. We usually always have certain students that we need to provide those levels of support. So guided while reading, for the summarizing example, I've provided a model lesson and a shared lesson for summarizing. So in my guided reading lesson, when I have my students with their leveled reader, that might be one of the strategies that I support in guided reading, which would be the area of summarizing. Guided reading, you're really looking at lots of different goals based on students' needs and based on the characteristics of the text you're using. But if I'm teaching summarizing during my whole group lesson, that might be one of the goals I focus in on guided reading. Guided teaching in my whole group lesson, my guided lesson, let's say I have students well below grade level, they might not be ready for that. I might have to really work on different strategies and actions that are more suited for kids at that lower level. Yeah.
Would she have had the same levels working together, or would she have had different levels of kids working together when she did their whole group, but then having to go to pairs?
I think it really depends when you look at shared and guided instruction. It depends on what it is you're doing, what is the task at hand, and how can kids handle it on their own. Because sometimes if you put kids that are all at the same level together, working on it, and that was not guided reading that you're watching, that was like a guided part of the lesson. So she might have had like differentiated groups where she might have had a higher student with like maybe a lower student working. Sometimes if I put my lowest two kids together, real well, right? Does anyone have ESL students here? I don't know if many people do. Anyway, like sometimes we have newcomer ESL students. So if I'm going to put two newcomer ESL students together, it's going to be difficult. So usually for like a lesson like this, where I'm teaching through the gradual release of that skill or that concept, I would probably have variant groups where I would kind of think who would work best together. And also you have to think about students, and when you have them work together, that one student is not giving the other student or the group, right? Because that happens too. So you just really have to be thinking about that.
That's another strategy we will be offering professional development. It's called PALS, Peer Assisted Learning Strategies, to pair with higher student.
Okay, so this is an example of guided reading during the reading part. So the teacher's already introduced the text, and now the kids are reading, and the teacher is monitoring the reading. So I'm just going to give you a little taste of some of the video clips I have. Some of you might be doing this already, or you've been through some guided reading training, but I have an example here that I wanted to share on what guided reading can look like during the reading. And in my video clip, you'll see an emergent lesson, an early lesson, and more of a fluent lesson. Nope. Okay. While she's getting this, I need to head to a quick training down at the Catholic Schools office.
Thank you. Ryan, but how did you know that we're live? It has with you and it has a very good what remember what you said doing on this piece? What were you doing to the dog? What did you think he was doing? You were watching. So what is this right here? What is this for? Look at this right here. 2 letters that sound like okay, but what 2 letters is that start with? Very good. It starts with T. It starts and it was fun. She also said, you're really getting better. You're going for people and on the road. And I'm on the I focus on the job. You went and looked at that beginning part. Is that something that was familiar to you when you tried to determine your slow word? Okay, I want you to keep going using those word chunks. Okay, good job. Can you go ahead and start reading here?
Where did you get those fish, Whereas I would love them.
So that was the during reading component of the guided reading lesson, where the students are responsible for reading that text independently during the lesson and the teacher is monitoring. Talk to the people at your table about what you just saw. Is this what you're thinking guided reading looks like? Is this what you're doing already? What are your thoughts? So that's really the goal in guided reading. That's the most important part of the guided reading lesson, is after we provide a meaningful book introduction, we're getting kids into text and monitoring their reading processes. We're monitoring their behaviors. We're taking notes. We're listening in and providing really good feedback. And so we're ready to know how to move the students forward, or it gives us ideas on what we can teach later in our guided reading lessons. But in order to have guided reading working, you do have to need the materials for your groups. You need to be able to level your students. So it is a journey. It might be at different levels of the journey, and that's okay. But I just wanted to give you a little taste of where some of the teachers I work with are at with guided reading. And so when we look at shared instruction and guided instruction, shared is really where the teacher is leading the discussion, prompting, and checking for understanding, doing little checks for understanding, facilitating and providing descriptive. Your note-taking guide really quick, it asks you, and I think you have to flip to the other side, it asks you what the difference is between guided and shared. Right in the middle is that long rectangle. The teacher's roles in shared reading is different from the roles in guided reading because, just write one thing, one difference that you see between what the teacher is doing in shared versus what the teacher is doing in guided. Independent instruction is really about students applying their strategy. That's what it's about. It's where students need little assistance to complete the task. It's not having students work independently on something they're not able to accomplish. And the biggie there for independent is that we're not going from modeled straight to independent. What's happening in between? What level of support and scaffolding are we providing for our students? Move over. And then once again, at that summarizing example, an example might be when reading on your own, I want you to practice summarizing. Remember, we summarize to remember important information. So the teacher might reinforce summarizing when she's doing reading or writing conferences. Whatever the concept might be, the students are working on their own, and I might be doing the checkup when I bring them up for a conference or as I'm monitoring the room. To do it more on their own and apply the strategy. Also in your, going back to the other packet that says academic action plan on the cover, we have a lot of packets here. Oh, actually, you know what? Sure. Wow. Actually, you know what? Well, let's look at this first, and I'm not going to make it look that. This packet we took from a book that we have in our district, and we created this through Curriculum Learning, and it's an academic action plan, and what this is it's divided into tabs of best instructional practices, like for vocabulary, assessment, math, rigor, engagement, differentiation, early childhood. We've put together all these tabs, and within the tabs are a list of strategies and the effect on student achievement with the research. And so, to show this to you, because I went ahead and copied the part on balanced literacy and the gradual release. So you can use this as a teaching tool. Maybe you can take it back to your schools and use it to some degree with working with your grade levels or in a staff meeting, because it's really about digging deeper with why it's important to have shared reading, have modeled instruction, and really the effect on student achievement. We had teams that worked really hard on this, and we did the research, and we tried to put the research in there as well. So it's also, I have to give a shout out to our director, Dr. Renee Kerberg. She really worked hard on getting our teams to put this together, and I'm really excited to share some of it with you. But it comes from this book that we put together. So this was just, these were the components on gradual release and balanced literacy. So we're talking about that today. In your other packet, after that summarizing sheet, I apologize, we're going back and forth through packets. There's a gradual release smart card. So yes, it's in there. Can I hold this up? Thank you. I'm sorry. It looks like this, and we call it a smart card. Again, it's going through those phases of the gradual release, and it's showing what the teacher should be doing in modeled, shared, guided. Like color copy, I can also send it electronically, maybe to your office, and you can send it out, because what's nice is we have it color coded. At the bottom, we have a color legend where some strategies are good for all students, some are good for culturally responsive teaching, and some with students that have need higher levels of support, like our students in special education, English language learners, and so forth. So I can send that out to you electronically, so you have that with the color coding as well. And I'm going to skip over this. Okay, so Ms. Bishop really wanted me to talk to you about this. I better do it. These are the next steps. So really, when we've done this training in the past, we always start with gradual release and balanced literacy. I know a lot of you have the background with gradual release and balanced literacy already. I'm sure a lot of you do, and you're doing this in your classroom. But it's nice just to be on the same page and to provide more research and dig a little deeper with what those components are. And hopefully it made you think about what you're doing already and acknowledge the good things you're doing in your classrooms. And so the next step is really the management, what it looks like. So when I'm polling my small group, what are my other students doing and how does that look? And some of you have good management systems in place already. We might be tapping into your ideas. And our next session is in December, so it's just a few weeks away. Oh, it's January. Okay, it's January. But that's good. So we are going to be talking about the Daily 5, and that's just a system that you can utilize in your classroom on getting the other kids while you're pulling your guided groups. Our goal is to really differentiate your group here. So if you're a primary teacher, bringing in someone that does this at the kindergarten, first grade level. If you're more an intermediate teacher, what it might look like, and hopefully bringing someone in to work with you at middle school, look at a middle school literacy classroom. So how can I best differentiate, and if I'm going to pull groups, what are my other students doing, and what's most meaningful for them? So that will be the next step in January, after the holidays. And then after we establish this, I believe we're having a special meeting with administrators on the next steps to benchmarking and running records, because in order to get this moving, you have to have benchmark kits in your building to benchmark students. So the next step will be, how can we get those in the building, and how can we get training in place, marking if you're not already doing that at this time in your building. Some of you are there and some of you don't have those materials yet. And then after you benchmark and get your students leveled, then we dig really deep into guided reading. And what does that whole lesson look like? What am I doing during a guided reading lesson? Placed in groups, how do I get them to move? How do I monitor their actions? I get really excited about guided reading. I know you probably don't want to stay. It'd be fun to stay and talk about it. So, okay, so one more thing on that handy dandy note taking, guys. At the bottom, you can write one takeaway because we're at 4:30. So if you could just write down one takeaway from today's session, or maybe something that validated your thinking or validated what you're already doing. You can just write one thing down in that box. Okay, at your table, there's like a little colored sign. So someone grab it. Someone grab it at your table. Do you see one? Okay, so if I describe what you have at your table, your whole table is going to cheer and yell out the name of the graduate release. Ready? It's going to be fun. Okay, so it's the teacher demonstrating, the teacher modeling. What is it? You guys, that's great. I'm working on my own. I'm practicing. I can do it. What is it? Together through the learning. Share. Right. Okay. They're ready to go home. I know we're tired. My students are doing it, they have more responsibility, and I'm monitoring and providing good descriptive feedback. And this is all called what? Where are you guys? It was a pleasure working with you. Thank you. You guys. No, not yet. I want to thank you so much for taking time after the school day. You're with students all day. It's a hard time of day, I understand. And we're ready to get home to our families and get home with our night. But I can't thank you enough for coming out this way and sharing this afternoon with me. And I look forward to our next time together.